Hey, good morning, everybody. We are going live today with Sue Gaunt, and Sue is assistant principal in the Chicago Symphony, and Sue is a good friend of mine. We are just now getting started, and I'm just opening my laptop here. So let's see if I can get this taken care of here, and let's see if I can join on with Sue. Okay, let's see. Okay. All right, sorry, my laptop shut unexpectedly. Sue is a good friend of mine, and there she is. Let's find Sue, go online. Let's see, practiced this yesterday. We're waiting for Sue to join. Connecting, hey, there she is, hey Sue.
Hey, how's it going? Good morning.
Hey, great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Is that your practice studio?
It is my practice room. It's in the dungeon a little bit, but it has little anecdotes of obviously the sea. This is my horn here.
Is it really?
Yep. It's a Ravinia advertisement.
Oh man, it looks backwards from here, but I can.
It is. To you, it would be, yes.
Yeah, fantastic.
And me.
And where is that? That's Chicago Symphony Orchestra brass.
Yep, that's a couple years ago.
That's it. So we have a couple people who are online right now. We have Dan Gingrich who's online. So morning, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
We have Horn Effect. We've got, let's see, a few other R Stern LMT. She says, hi, Sue and Dave.
Yes, Becky Stern.
Okay. Wait, is that Becky Stern? Like the violinist Becky Stern?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, she's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, Fort Worth Symphony with her.
Yep.
Man, yeah, she's a hiker and just a biker, all sorts of athlete.
Yep.
And then we also have Karen Bazarek is online. And so, hi, Karen. Great to see you. So, Sue, I guess I just wanted to get to know you today a little bit better and just have a conversation about, how your journey came into being, into the. So, you're from Rhode Island, Gloucester, Rhode Island?
Mostly from Rhode Island, yes.
Okay, fantastic. And were you from a musical family?
No. Well, my dad loves music. He loves music very, very much. He listens to Mozart piano concerti on a daily basis. There's not a day that goes by that he's not listening to some of the best pianists in the world that he's all picked out on his own.
Wow. And who are his favorites?
Oh, goodness. Not a very good question to ask me. I just know when I go there, like there's Mitsuko Uchida, there's, Polini, different, just all the ones that he mentions are good. Excellent.
And they're most of the ones that we have come by the Chicago Symphony.
Yes.
Have you ever introduced him to Mitsuko or to Maestro Barenboim?
Well, when I first got this job, he had been such a pivotal role for me in just going for music. Partly by saying, yeah, I don't know if you should. So therefore making me see, I'll just prove you wrong. And partly because of his love of music. When the very first Father's Day, I got the job in October, came in January 2005. And for June, Father's Day, I sent him 2 tickets to a Mozart concert with Barenboim, playing Mozart and conducting. And so 2 tickets to the concert and 2 tickets to fly here. And as a thank you for supporting me all those years.
Wow. Fantastic. And
I'd like to do a redo someday.
Well, I think Mitsuko is probably going to come back.
Yeah. So
we could, next time Mitsuko is out, I remember Mitsuko played one of my first weeks of the orchestra. And her touch, and especially, just how she interacts with Maestro Muti too is really special.
I know. She's really a wonderful, wonderful person too. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, she is. She gives back in a lot of ways, with teaching and with the Marlborough Festival, I know.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you came to the horn. Where did your love for the horn begin?
Well, I didn't pick the horn. My dad picked it. He actually, my band director, I think in 6th grade, he was a horn player. in the community orchestra in Rhode Island Philharmonic, and which is now a good freelance orchestra. It's like a pickup orchestra.
Wow.
He, I think, played third horn, and his way of deciding which kids were going to go for which instruments at the beginning of 6th grade was to give them this pitch and hearing test. So he'd have someone come and put headphones on you, and then you had about 300 questions, and there was a pitch, a baseline pitch that was given, and then you had to motion whether the pitch was above, below, or the same.
Huh.
So there are about 300 questions. I think I just got a couple wrong. And so my pitch differentiation was good. And so he said, he called my dad. He didn't ask me. He called my dad at work and said, "Can you convince your daughter to play the horn?" So one thing he didn't know is that I don't like to disappoint my dad. And Dad came home that day, and already my 2 older brothers had played trumpet. And he said, "Well, what do you think about the French horn?" You know, very New England accent. And I said, "No, thank you," at first, because the horns that we had in our school were dented and beat up and had initials carved into them. And there was, you know, lead pipes that were sideways, and they smelled bad.
Yes, they did. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I was like, "No, thank you. I want something shiny." So I wanted to play flute or clarinet. So badly that I borrowed my friends' instruments and brought them home and tried to teach myself.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. But eventually I really enjoyed the horn. It sort of came to me relatively easily at the time, and I just started having fun with it. So
I mean, so what I think a lot of people don't know about Rhode Island is that it's a really small state. I didn't know until I went to Newport, like actually how small Rhode Island is. And
so tiny. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the coastal part of Rhode Island is like fishing and that boat building. I mean, it's like kind of, it's a little bit rural.
Very. I was raised in a rural area. We were the first school district in the state to have no school because of our dirt roads. I didn't live on a dirt road, but a lot of my friends at school lived, you know, a quarter to a half a mile apart on dirt roads where there was no traffic, just the postman, the bus driver, and the people who lived there. It was just really rural.
I mean, that's kind of a special place to grow up, though. I mean, you get to be outdoors all the time, hiking. Yeah. You probably had a garden, and like.
Yes, my parents bought a house when we moved to Rhode Island. That was half an acre of land, and it abutted all this woods. So I would just go out in the woods and get lost in the woods for hours until the sun went down, and then I'd make my way home.
That's such a, I mean, a American kind of experience to grow up and just be like out in the woods all day. I remember doing that when I was in northern Michigan. You know, I'd go out and I'd go hiking or biking, and you know, you'd find the local town kids, and you know, and that was just our summers. We'd just go out on a bike and we'd come back for dinner. So.
Yeah, pretty much just go outside, get out of my hair. You know, I mean, we didn't have any screens growing up. We didn't even have a TV until I was 17. So there was nothing to do but read a book or go outside or construct something, or was on roller skates with your brother, like is what I did. Only he was not on roller skates and I was. That didn't end so well when I ran out of pavement.
So you were accident prone as a child as well?
I was fearless and have landed on my chin too many times.
But I think that fearless mentality kind of goes into playing the horn as well, right? Because absolutely. I mean, sometimes the horn, I mean, for lack of better words, it can be a little scary because we're not quite sure what's going to happen. And we just have to say, I can do this. I'm going to land this jump on the bike or whatever.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I'm going to do it.
You have to have that feeling for sure. And yeah, you really do. I mean, the horn is a precarious thing to do.
So how did you transfer from being kind of like a really good high school or middle school student to deciding this is what I want to pursue?
It was a pretty simple equation. It was the most fun that I had, and it was the easiest thing I did. So at the time, and why not do something fun? Now my dad, he was like, well, how are you going to earn a living? There's not very many jobs. It's really hard to get a job, so on and so forth. But he decided it was okay that I pursue music because I would find a husband who would support me.
Oh, those are older times, right?
Older times, yeah. I tease him now. I say, well, I'm supporting my husband. No, not exactly. But
That's great. So, your father's in sciences. He's in he was an engineer at first, and then he went into the medical field.
Yes, he was electrical engineer, but didn't like being in a cubicle. So he went back to medical school, and he's been a physician forever. Like, he's still practicing full time, even now in the middle of COVID-19.
Wow.
He's 79. He's loves what he does.
Unbelievable. So he's still practicing. He's not, I mean, he's probably on the front line of the COVID epidemic right now.
Yes. Well, I think right now the people that they're seeing behind video chat somewhat and a phone. So he's somewhat protected, I think. My brother is ER, and he's right on the front lines. Yeah.
No kidding. Wow. Yeah. Man, well, is he staying healthy? Is everybody, healthy and okay? And
so far, yes. I check in with him every few days and say, hey, how's it going?
Wow.
And so far, everyone is okay.
Oh, man. Well, yeah, that's unbelievable service what he's doing right now. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I bet it's also kind of scary, to watch him be like up close and personal with this. But I mean, that's what you have to do if you have the training, right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's kind of like what we do with music, right? It's like, hey, we have the training, so we go out and we play every day, even though sometimes it's like, a little bit scary to be on stage. And,
absolutely. Yep.
I don't know, for me, sometimes like, that solo comes up and I get those butterflies in my stomach and I'm just like, okay, here we go.
Yep. Just jump in feet first. Yeah.
Yeah. So, could you talk a little bit about what your studies were like? I know you went to the New England Conservatory.
Well, I'll back up a little bit. When I was almost 5, our family moved back from Central America to New England, where my parents are originally from.
Wow.
So we lived in Panama and then Costa Rica for a total of 7 years. I was born partway through that, so I came back, I was almost 5.
Wow. Are you Costa Rican or are you Panamanian?
I was born in Panama, so I could have been Panamanian citizen, but I never claimed that at 18. So
okay.
I was born on American soil in Panama in the Canal Zone. So when we came back, we left our entire household of items, including our piano that my brother had started on in Costa Rica.
Mm-hmm.
And we came back, my dad got a job and we bought a house and we started from the ground up where, we had to purchase one appliance every paycheck, So it's February and my dad sat down with my mom and said, okay, we have enough money for a piano or a refrigerator. And my mom says, it's February. We'll put the milk outside. Let's get a piano.
That's awesome.
So we got a piano and started on lessons before we had a refrigerator. That was the priority.
Wow. So that's a huge priority in your family, is the music.
My dad, yes, absolutely wanted us all to take instruments. We all took 2 instruments, a wind and a string. So string meaning piano or guitar.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a brass quartet for a while.
in your family. You had the 2 trumpets, you had the horn, and
my brother played trombone. So we'd go to nursing homes and play for the nurses and the patients of my dad. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, we used to do family Christmas where we'd get out. My dad played bassoon terribly. My brother, played trumpet really well, and so we'd get out. We'd hear the bassoon, and we'd like, oh no, it's all right, family orchestra time.
Yep.
So that's really.
None of them play anymore, but they all have an appreciation for it.
And that's really important.
Yeah.
I find that a lot of people that have kind of musical careers have a family or someone who's like supporting them or someone who believes in them and who's really encouraging them to play music.
Oh, totally. I used to sit in the middle of my household kitchen and play while my mom made dinner.
Wow.
And she never minded. I'd just sit there and I'd play and chat and play and chat.
That's awesome.
Yes. Even when I came back from college, came back to my first job, I would literally set up shop wherever she was and play.
Oh man. And was it more like a concert thing, or was it just more like, hey, I like being social and the music is part of being, social?
I'm practicing. I have to get the space time in, and I want to hang out with you at the same time. So I'll play something and then I'll say something back and forth.
That's awesome. For me, I can only do one thing at once. I'm like, no, don't talk to me. I'm trying to think about this.
Even today, I go home and my parents have this large picture window looking out. They live in Massachusetts now, outside of Boston, and they, once again, about a wildlife refuge. So there's lots of birds and lots of trees, lots of 100-year-old pine trees. There's horses across their one-lane road, and what I do is I set up shop right in front of the window so I can look outside while I'm doing, the stuff that is you do every day, the lip slur, the stuff that you don't have to think quite as much about as you're warming up. And my mom will sit and have her coffee behind me. It's a big room, which is good. But yeah, so it still happens.
I feel like there's a big correlation for me with nature and playing music.
Absolutely, yes.
Some of my best moments, like practicing, I used to set the music stand up outside, and I would just, be in northern Michigan, and I'd have, all the trees in the forest around me, and I'd just play, and it was just freeing, and you look at the trees, and you look at the flowers, and you hear the birds, and it's really part of my story as well.
The outdoors is what's in so much of the music that we play anyway, think songs about rivers and songs about mountains and songs about oceans and this.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Brahms Trio was written as Brahms was like taking a walk in the Schwarzwald.
Yeah.
You're familiar. He took a friend back there later on in life, and he said, "This is the patch where the sun was coming down, and this is where I was walking when I came up with the melody for the first movement of the Brahms Trio."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's
so much.
Boston.
Yes. Oh, yes. Dan and I walked past that place last time we were in Baden-Baden, but it was closed. It was only open certain days, and so we walked by, but didn't get to go in.
Yeah, it's notoriously hard to get into that that Brahms house.
One day a week,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were in school, you studied with Richard Mackay, who was kind of one of the people who I was drawn to study with. Richard Mackay, out of all the teachers I took lessons with, he was one of the people that had I gotten enough scholarship money, I would have gone to New England Conservatory just to study with him.
Yeah, he's a character. He was great. Yeah, my first studying was with Elizabeth Dean, who also played in the Rhode Island Philharmonic, just in school.
Okay.
And then from there, I was in high school with Mr. Pandolfi, Nato Pandolfi.
Okay.
And he sent me, when I was in high school, and every other Friday I would go up to Boston and take lessons with Gus in high school, Gus Sebring.
Oh, wow.
And in the summers, when I came back from college, I would travel up to Tanglewood and study with Dick Mackay.
Wow.
Because the last thing to come into my playing was my middle, low register, and low register.
Mine too, absolutely. Yeah,
and he helped me figure out some of that. And then I studied with Norman Bolter, who also helped me figure out some of that low horn.
But Norman's a second trombone player of the Boston Symphony? Yeah,
he was, yes.
Wow. I'm actually friends with his son, and his son teaches at Northwestern.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's just a small world, but it's really, Ben Bolter, he's an oboe player, but he teaches, I think modern music or contemporary music, excuse me.
I would imagine. I mean, Norman does a lot of composing. Yeah.
So,
I got so much out of every one of those teachers.
What were some of the lessons that you learned from Gus? Let's start with Gus.
Gus, all music. I would play something, and it was more the imitation strategy with him.
Yeah.
He would he'd say, well, how about a little more like this, and then he'd play it. So then I'd play it, and he'd say, well, can you come back to the middle a little bit more? Because I would pendulum swing. I would do whatever he said too much. And so it was by imitation that I learned how to play with him. And a little bit of technique. I was, pressing too much on my upper lip, and he would just have me think about moving my mouthpiece down only for 5 minutes a day. Huh. That's it. He didn't want me over obsessing of it. Wow. And then he would also play the chord structures of different pieces like Czech 5, the solo, he would play, go over to the piano and play on that,
Oh man.
and then set me up so that I could hear it in my ear.
Wow. I think that's so important that like some teachers are able to, you know, play the harmonies so you can hear what's going on. I know Roger Kaza can do that as well. Like when I remember
Awesome. Yeah.
sat down with Brahms too in a master class, it was just like, this is what's going on the bass line, and he'd play the chords, and I just get like, wow, you know, it's.
Yep. That's what Gus used to do. Gus does a lot of composing, or at least did when I was studying with him.
Uh-huh.
And he played in a band. So
Like a rock band or
I
jazz?
think so.
Really?
I think so. Yeah, I might be a little fuzzy on the details, but yes, he long time ago.
Wow. And what lessons did you take away from Mr. Mackay? I mean, Mr. Mackay was third horn in the Cleveland Orchestra under Zell. He played a lot of stuff out in the sessions in Hollywood, and then
Marlboro Music Festival, I think.
Yeah, he's on those 2 horn recordings from the Marlboro Music Festival, like all the Mozart serenades. Yeah, with Bud Wright and Myron Bloom and.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I got out of him mostly, he was helping me fix my low register.
Yes.
And also with him, I don't know if you know this, but Nato Pandolfi and Dick Mackey were roommates at New England Conservatory. I think.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of funny.
It's small world.
Small world. But Mr. Mackey would get together a bunch of his students, like 2 or 3 of his students, and we'd play through Beethoven stuff, Mozart stuff, like duos, trios, quartets. So I did a lot of that with him, and that left a big impression. How do you play through these things, listening to people around you with the simplest, most elegant music out there? I mean, he's a Mozart buff. I'm sure you know that.
Yes.
He absolutely loves Mozart. So I got a lot out of playing together with him and a couple of his students.
Wow. And what lessons did you take away from kind of like that, the pieces of, playing together and, making chamber music?
Well, sometimes music is simpler than we think. I mean, the line is there. The line is very easy to find, I think, if we just pretend that we're singing it. If we're singing it in our voices, then we should be doing the same thing as we play, because it's just an extension of us.
Yeah.
And that was what I learned from him, and also very much so Gus. And then even Nato Pandolfi, I used to do solfegging with him. I had a theory class in high school, and he would yell at me, "Don't sound like a wet noodle."
Yeah.
Even when I was solfegging, I was singing, and he didn't want to hear just the notes. Even if it was a scale, it had to be musical.
Wow.
So, and they all had an impact.
There's intent even when we're singing like scales. There's an intent when it's just solfege or whatever. I mean, that's such a great lesson. Hey, care about everything you do. Everything music is music, right? And put, whether it be playing like a Mahler symphony or a Mozart symphony, or just singing a solfege exercise, let's put the same emphasis and care into that.
Yeah, and they're more similar than we think. Yes, Mahler is Mahler and Mozart is Mozart, but the line is usually extremely transparent, I think.
Wow.
And that's what I got out of them, I think. It's like, it's you can find it very easily. It always goes somewhere and comes from somewhere. That's one thing that Gus used to talk about is this note going or coming? Is this note going? Is this the crest, the going note, the coming note, or some of both? Like at the peak of a phrase, and it starts to maybe ebb a little bit in its intensity. Is it the whole note that does that, or is it a part of the note and then it flips and switches? Those kinds of ideas. Every single note is going in a certain direction.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I learned from Dale too. He's like, there are 3 types of notes. There's either crescendo, decrescendo, or virtual crescendo. I'm sure you've heard that from Dale. It's like a crescendo that's so imperceivable, but it still has direction through it. There's
you gotta have direction. Yes, the intensity of the sound. Yeah.
So you went to New World Symphony after New England Conservatory, or was there anything in between New World?
I went to NEC, and then I traveled down. I auditioned for New World at Tanglewood. I met Odo and his wife at National Orchestral Institute. 92, I think. Oda would remember. I
Was
think we
Ryan
both,
Anthony there too?
perhaps I would have to go back and look at my photos. I'm not sure if he was. Not at NOI, I don't think.
Okay.
But that same summer, all three of us went to NOI.
Wow.
And then we went up to Tanglewood. And where was I going with this? Oh, I auditioned for the New World Symphony. And then I went with a friend, traveled down to Florida after Tanglewood just to visit, just to see what it was like. And then I auditioned there again for Michael. And they needed a horn player. And I fit the bill at the time. So I joined up that following semester, I guess you might call it, next.
Wow.
The January, I think.
Wow, that's fantastic. And when you were there, I believe New World was a bit of a newer program?
It was pretty new. I think I was the 9th year. Yeah.
The 9th year, okay.
Still growing pains. Yeah, the horn section was still growing and starting to figure itself out.
I'm sure the program was probably trying to figure itself out as well. Just what's the purpose of this? How do we best teach the students? How do we make an impact to the community? What's our, why are we, But what lessons did you take away from New World Symphony?
Experience. The big, I think, Achilles heel for musicians, professional or not quite professional musicians, is going from school and then jumping right into playing a different program every week. At school, you play a program, maybe 2 a semester.
Yeah.
So you're just not used to seeing music fly at you, and you haven't seen a lot of the music yet, not in the setting of playing with others. So at New World, we would have several different kinds of weeks. We would have reading rehearsals where we would just read through 2 Brahms symphonies in the rehearsal, or 2 Strauss tone poems. So you could just get your feet wet and understand. And we weren't performing them at that time, but he would just read through them. And that was fantastic. Some of those weeks were 14 service weeks. I remember in the early days. It was exhausting.
Oh my gosh.
The practice rooms were open from 7 in the morning till 11 at night, which was also fantastic.
Yeah.
We also had the opportunities of putting together our own chamber music series.
Huh.
And you could conduct, you could sing, you could play your instrument, you could collaborate, it was all on our own. The chamber music. It was not anything to do with Michael or any staff. It was just, okay, I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday evening, once a month. You can do what you want. We have the stage and the stage crew from 8 to 10. So you figure out the program and we'll print it.
So what pieces did you play on the chamber music series that you remember?
I remember, oh boy, I'm very bad with the composers' names and stuff. Is it the Weber? Chamber music for chamber orchestra piece. That's not Weber.
I'm going to interrupt you really quick. Alana Vector from the New York Philharmonic, she says hi, and she says thank you for sharing your experiences with us.
Oh, awesome.
I just wanted to, just say hi to Alana. She's a good friend of mine. Yeah. For me, some of the chamber music pieces that I've really enjoyed playing are, the Mozart serenades and, of course, the Brahms trio. I do that with every single violin friend that I have. Let's do the Brahms.
Yeah. Well, down there, I think I may have played the Mozart horn quintet.
That's one of my favorites.
And the Schubert octet I played at Tanglewood. I remember that.
Sarah Ferenc says Berg.
The Berg, yes. That's what it was.
So it was the Berg Chamber Symphony, was it? Or
Yep.
Oh man, that's a crazy piece.
Yes. And yes, I remember that being quite a big one because it required so many people and one of the musicians conducted. So I think he was actually a conducting fellow of some sort. But everything's getting fuzzy. It was so long ago.
So yeah, it's experience of playing in chamber music, experience of playing orchestral pieces, and probably experience working with a horn section. Not just all right, this week I'm going to work on who's in the orchestra. Because usually college studios have 15, 16 horn players, and it's whoever wins the audition is sitting in the horn section with you. Yeah,
I know it's being flexible, learning how to work with different personalities, different types of horn sounds, and Yeah, it was pretty in its small stages. I remember I played a lot of fourth horn that first time I was there. I played, I think, exclusively fourth horn for 3 months.
Wow.
And I learned after that 3 months, I couldn't climb out of the basement. My mouth was this big, you know, it felt like, how am I ever going to be able to play something high again? And it took a couple of weeks of uncomfortable playing to get there.
Yes. I mean, that's for sure, though. If you're playing like always in the low register, it feels like you lose your high register. And for me, you know, I feel like I'm playing often in the high register, but if I don't practice in the low register, I lose it.
Yes. Yeah. I've learned from that experience, I've learned to always pay attention to both registers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What stuff do you do on a daily basis to kind of keep your chops in shape? Or like, you said lip slurs and long tones or scales when you were looking out the window, but do you have a routine?
Yeah, I have a routine. It took me a long time to learn this lesson, and it was actually Gail that sort of turned the light bulb on for me.
Wow.
Had a couple lessons with her when I auditioned here, and when I was actually playing here. Just went to go ask her some questions.
Wow.
And one important thing I think to realize as a musician is your physiology. What is your natural physiology?
Yeah.
So I know I'm a tight, muscly type of person.
Myself, yeah, included.
Yeah, so I have to really work on flexibility. I could almost just throw away any of the strength training things and just work on flexibility, and that really, really helps a lot. So it wasn't until after I got this job that, you know, I get really stiff all the time. I'd be doing like 4 octaves of 10 quarter notes to a beat, a note, you know, so I would be doing these long tone scales that lasted 4 octaves and took me a half an hour to do. And then I wonder why I was tight all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first got here, I'd play a long tone scale, as many octaves as would fit comfortably into the scale itself,
Yeah.
like C or E or G or whatever. And then I'd play it in half notes, and then I'd play it in quarter notes, and then I'd play it in eighth notes, all the way down to septuplets.
Wow.
And it would take me like close to an hour to do that.
No kidding.
Then I went and met with Gail, and I said, well, how do you just stay fluid? I seem like I'm always tight. And she says, well, for me, I'm just a really tight person and really muscular person. And you look at Gail and you look at me, and our physiology is so similar. I look at her, I go, wow, it looks just like me in just the way we hold ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
And our stature as well. And so she says, I have to do flexibility all the time. And the light bulb went on. And so that's mostly what I do. Lip trills, lip slurs, all over the horn, low register stuff. You know, that's my warm-up routine. The Doug Hill routine, actually.
Oh, no kidding. Is that available? Is that book available? Or is it in one of his books?
Yeah, I think I bought 2 of his books, one for home and one for the hall, shortly after I met with Gail that time, and there's been no going back.
Wow. And
too much.
How long does it take you to do the routine?
I don't do the whole routine. I do mostly the flexible parts of it.
Okay.
Some of the loud parts of it. I don't do the multiple tonguing unless something is coming up, because I figured that out. So I just have to touch on it when I get closer to something like
Scheherazade or
Scheherazade, something French.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's what I still work on today.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
What does it look like for you kind of like on a weekly basis? Like, so for me, I mean, obviously you said in New World, you just all of a sudden had all this music coming at you. And what I noticed is like every orchestra that I've kind of been in, it seems like the bigger the orchestra, it seems like the more rep I have coming at me that I have to learn.
Oh, yeah.
And how do you stay on top of that? And what do you do for your preparation?
Well, since you've come, I have less to do.
Yeah, well, a six person is really nice, right? A 6-person section.
6 people is awesome.
Yeah, we can
5 is tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've learned to look out more in advance than I used to. And also play through the entire piece so that I don't get surprised by something that's coming up. If I haven't done it a few times, then it can surprise me on stage.
Do you count the rest as well, or not?
No, I
Okay.
sort of do the gym thing. I think Jim, to keep his strength or to stay strong, he'll read through entire pieces without any rests.
Uh-huh.
So I, generally speaking, won't do the rests unless they are complicated odd meters,
Hmm.
and then
Okay.
I'll
Yeah.
work on them so that I know where I am.
Okay.
But I tend to skip over rests, tend to skip over big football notes, and like shorten their duration so that I know what's coming next after. Because sometimes I can mentally, I think we all can, fall asleep on a long note, and then all of a sudden you have something coming right after it. So I have to make sure I'm on the long note, and then what comes after it, the transition to the next part, I have to make myself work on. That's something
Wow.
that's key to me.
Huh. Okay. So you play the long note, and then you like while you're on the long note, you imagine that you've just held it for 4 bars.
Yeah.
Give or take. And then all of a sudden you're like, all right, now what's after this? Like, how do I transition from this long note to the thing, instead of just being in the moment on this long note, now I'm looking ahead to this,
Yeah.
that's coming up.
Yeah. Especially if it's a quick fingering and that kind of thing, I find that it can be a little bit of a jar. You're on this long note, you're hanging out, you're listening around you. It sounds really nice, and you're in tune with everything. And okay, oops, now we have like 8/16 notes to do, and they're all accidentals. What do you do?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I look for in music now.
Wow.
When I'm trying to work on it.
So, I mean, at this point, you've probably seen most of the pieces come up again, or there's not too many surprises. You've probably done most of the pieces at least once, unless it's a new composition. When you come back to a piece, how do you refamiliarize yourself with a piece? Because sometimes I feel like when I come back to a piece, I'm like, oh, I forgot about that part, or I forgot about this.
It depends on how many times we've done it. Like
Okay.
Shostakovich 5, I can turn to exactly the 3 points in it that I need to work on every time.
Okay.
And other pieces, I do forget about things if they're maybe obscure, or if I haven't played that part enough, because with Odo and I switching around so much, there's different things in each part, so we haven't had as many times on the same pieces as everyone else.
So that's like a really interesting thing that the Chicago Symphony does, is that everyone plays a different part in the section. I mean, you've played some second, you've played some third, you've played fourth while I've been there, assistant. Yeah, it's so awesome that you get to play all these different parts, and it keeps everything fresh, right?
It does.
Yeah.
As utility, you would expect that.
Okay.
Except for we've had the opportunity to play principal too, and we still do as a point system when we're doing extra work. However, I do think that the disadvantage of always having it change around is that you don't see the same part, so you don't go, oh, I know what to do in that one.
Yes.
I guess Dave knows all the fourth stuff. Jim knows all the second stuff. So Odo and I have to go, okay, we're on second this time, fourth last time, third this time, assistant the next time. Oh, that's in this part. I'll speak for myself. I find that a challenge, but interesting.
Wow. I mean, I think it would be really rewarding, because for me, I would love to just like, okay, I'm playing high this week. Now I get to play low this next week, or I get to play some principal this week. It would just be something to be, number one, for my face to be really good, but also for my brain as well.
It's really fantastic because you're also sitting next to different people.
Yeah.
You're sitting to the right of someone else who has something different to offer. Everyone in the section has so much to offer, but everyone's a little bit different, like we all are, And I love that. I love trying to figure out how I can best match the person to my left.
I think one of my favorite memories is I got to play, I think, fourth horn just in a reading of Brahms 4. It was for one of those community concerts that the orchestra was doing last year during the strike. But, I think, there was traffic problems, or Dave had some problems getting to the community concert. So just for the reading, I got to sit fourth horn on Brahms 4. I was like, wow, I know this piece so well, but I haven't played it.
Yep. And also the week that we COVID-19 interrupted our playing, you played fourth reading on something as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's so much fun.
David was sick, yeah.
Yeah, that was. I remember that. Yeah, that was really, really fun. It was Gershwin.
Yeah.
It was the Gershwin. Yes. It wasn't Rhapsody in Blue, because that's 3 horns. It's I'm gonna Pour You Best Overture. That's the one.
That's what it was.
That was tough. There were like all those accidentals. I was just like,
Yes, that's the kind of stuff that I always have to. Gershwin, I always have to read the whole thing because often it's faster, especially if it's the movie. I think we had something canceled for the strike last year, which was a Gershwin. I think it was Rhapsody in Blue. Was it? No, there was a Gershwin film or something, and the conductor who was going to play it said that is so much faster than anyone ever plays it in concerts. So I had been working on it, getting it up more, and I thought. I forget which one it is because as soon as the week is gone, out it goes, you know, in my head.
Yeah, exactly, because we're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
What was your audition like for the Chicago Symphony? I mean,
I auditioned 4 times, I think. Yeah, and I think the only one of us that has auditioned only once is Dan. Everyone else in the section has auditioned more than once.
Wow.
That included Dale, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, so I auditioned for this, let's see, let me think for a second. The second to last time, like the time before I won, there was a huge blizzard on the East Coast. And I was living with my folks, and it was February, I think. The blizzard came through and every airport shut down.
Wow.
And I thought I had turned down so much freelance work to go to this audition. And I was like, I have to go. So I was calling every airport. The only airport that I could get a flight out of was Albany because the storm had started on one side and moved itself east, you know.
Yeah.
So they cleared out faster and they have the equipment, Albany, New York being blasted by snow often enough. They know how to deal with it. So I drove through the blizzard part in the eastern part of the state in my car, stayed at a Hampton Inn or something like that for like 4 hours because I got up at 2 o'clock in the morning and was taking a like 5:30 flight or something like that. Drove to the airport. It was negative 13 degrees. I remember this because I had my car cranked on heat and I had bought a Matrix specifically for the reason that I can sit in the back seat and practice.
Wow.
So I was sitting in the back seat and the heat is on full blast and it says negative 13 degrees for temperature. And it was pitch dark because it was 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was practicing my warm up because by the time I got to the audition, I knew I wouldn't have any time because I would be running later than I had anticipated at first. So, got in the plane, you know, got there, almost instantly had to play. I ended up getting a split vote that time, went back and played, and it didn't work out that time. But I came back again that fall in October, and the audition was interesting because when we got to the last round, it was all Chicago trained people, and I just thought, okay, well, maybe this isn't the right job for me this time because I've never been trained in Chicago and I know there's a specific way of playing. Yeah. But I had some experience with some people who had trained in Chicago in the jobs that I had played. So San Francisco Symphony is full of Chicago trained players. And North Carolina at the time had 2 Chicago trained players as well. Wow. And I just started picking their brains the years previous to that because it had never occurred to me to intentionally change your sound, believe it or not, because I had my sound and that was it, and that's how I played. But in San Francisco, they started to talk about how big your oral cavity is and how that makes your sound more diffuse or more focused. And so getting to the final round, I thought 3 Chicago trained players, I'm just going to chill out because it's probably not going to happen. I had so much fun playing in the section round. And it turned out okay for me, you know. Just I ended up winning it, and I married my husband 2 months later, and then moved here. Wow. And it's been a fun ride ever since.
That's fantastic, unbelievable. I love hearing that story. But what strikes me is you let go of results. You kind of let go of the outcomes, and you were just like, you know what? I'm just gonna be who I am and enjoy this and be in the moment. Yep. And since you kind of said, hey, like, I'm probably not going to win this, you just kind of like let it go.
Yeah.
And I think you were able to play better than, you know.
Well, auditions for me have always kind of been like that. Like, by the time I go to an audition, I am not trying to win it anymore. I've done what I do. I've worked really hard. Getting ready for Chicago that time, I was practicing up to 4 hours a day, more than I ever have before or since. And I thought, once you're done with all your work and you go someplace, it's your reward to go there. So I always would fill up my time, if I didn't get anywhere in the auditions, with something fun that I had never done before. So I had planned to go to the Art Institute. I planned to take myself out to a nice dinner at a nice restaurant. I stayed in a really nice hotel. I would do things like that.
Yeah.
And I would often bring something that reminded me of someone to play for that person if there was a reason to play for them.
Oh.
That kind of thing. And so I could let go of the day, because it really isn't up to you, because there's so many moving parts. There's the committee, there's how much sleep everyone had, what the hall sounds like, if you feel stiff or not, if you got a good night's sleep, or if the radiator kept you up all night. There's so many different variables.
Yeah.
So letting go is a good part of that.
Wow. That's fantastic. What a lesson for young players, who are trying to make it. What did you notice immediately about joining the Chicago Symphony? Like, what were some of your first impressions? And then, one thing that I've really enjoyed being a part of the horn section is just the teamwork and the camaraderie.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah. The section is fantastic. Not just in the way everyone plays, but just the personalities are just such good people. Kind, helpful, compassionate, supportive. So one of the things I say to people who have never been here before, who don't have any experience with Chicago horn section, I say, listen, in our section, everyone assists everyone else. There's not a single week that goes by that someone that maybe shouldn't assist is not assisting. Like Dave will, if I run out of air, Dave, and I'm playing third, Dave will help me get through that. Same with Jim. Of course, the assistant always does assist, but then the principal assists the assistant. The second assists the third. In the Rhenish Symphony, Jim, all the repeats in that third horn part, it can be pretty brutal. So just a measure or two off is a really awesome thing. And Jim will come in on that kind of thing. So I guess that's what I usually say, is that for a section to have the humility to offer to help and support, it's difficult what we do. So that extra bit of knowing that they want the best out of you as well is the best part of the job for me.
Yeah.
They're great people.
Yeah, it's like everyone's cheering you on and wants the best for you. And that's a really great way to describe it. I just feel like, hey, there is that support, but what can I do to help you do your best? And I've felt that from day one, just getting to work with you guys.
It's really terrific. So the two impressions, that's one of them, is how great everyone is together and how we seem to flip around the section. But also intention, like the intention of the music. You can absolutely be sure that everyone in this section is listening all the time. It auto corrects. There's very little that, Dale used to say an occasional thing. Dan used to say an occasional thing. But generally speaking, there's this trust about the section where you just know that they're listening to what you're doing and it's going to work out just fine. Just give it its time to work out the kinks and it's just fine. Wow. I love that too. You can trust everyone. You don't have to say, oh, you need to do that because you're not listening. Everyone's listening.
Yeah, that's such a gift that everyone is listening and, everyone's like doing their best and on the same page.
Yeah.
How do you think Dale kind of like what was it like to work with Dale? Obviously, he's a fantastic musician, huge personality. Like, did you learn any lessons from him?
Yep. I learned that it's all about the music to him. It's not about him. And he would come on stage with an idea. When I first got into the orchestra, he would come over and he'd sit down and he'd say, I wanted to feel more like this. And he just push my arm, with the intensity, this constant intensity or something like that. And I'd be like, okay, I get that. And, he was really clear that it wasn't about, this is what I want. It was about, this is what the music is demanding of us. Yeah. And it was very little, very seldom said, but it was really, it sat there with me. The other thing I remember is that I'm one of those horn players that I kind of just play. I often don't know exactly what key I'm in or going to, but I can feel the pull of the notes, like if it's a third or a seventh or a fifth or whatever, I feel the pull of where they want to be in the chord. And I started on piano, and to me, piano pitch was different than horn pitch, so I never combined the two until I got here. So speaking in concert pitch was confusing to me because no one ever did that.
Yeah.
Until I got here, and then I was like, I was translating all the time, you know. And Dale would, I can remember this. He would come in, and it would always be like Rachmaninoff, which was an E all the time. And he'd say, "What key are we in? What part of the chord are you on? Where does it need to be?" He would just be quizzing me all the time. And so I had to double translate because it would always be in a transposition to start with. And I can remember just being like, like that. Now it's much easier because that's how the section speaks. But at first it was a challenge, but good because everyone is speaking in concert pitch in the orchestra, and it's strange that we don't.
Yeah. What did that teach you, like learning about like the tonalities and where the notes were, you know, what function the note had in the chord?
Well, I understood what he was getting after, this owning the key of the piece. But I also, over the years, realized that people do things differently. They get to the same result through different methods. So I don't feel it as important for me to be able to name spot on every key that we're in.
Yeah.
I feel it's more important to know how you line up in the feel of it.
Okay.
Like if I can feel that pull of a note wanting to be low or wanting to be just separate enough to be perfect, like a perfect interval, or, you know, hold your ground in some of those odd inversions where you feel the pull of something being lower, but it really needs to pull apart. I find that it's okay to accept yourself as yourself and play the way you are and get to the same result by not the same means.
Wow.
I used to have a big problem with me not knowing the key I'm in every single time. And I could stop for a second and go, oh yeah, but I'm in the line of the music and the feel of the pull, that I'm more of a feeling person. So I'm okay with that finally.
Yeah. So after Dale left or retired, Dan played acting principal for 6 years. Dan's one of my heroes. I mean, Dan's just like consummate. He's just a nice person. I've never heard him say a bad thing about anybody. And also, he's one of the, he can play high, he can play low. He's always unbelievably prepared. And it seems like it's just the right thing at the right time. Like, you know, you're just like, oh yeah, it should be brassy here. And he just intuitively plays.
Don't you just hate that? No, just kidding.
Yeah. And then he can like listen to what's going on around him and immediately copy that and like find his way to go. He's like such a chamber player. But what lessons did you what did you notice immediately when you started playing with Dan?
Well, in the audition, I played third to Dave playing fourth. I played second to Dale and Dan playing first and third, in different excerpts. And I played fourth to Dan playing third. So I did 3 different things. I think it was Eroica, Dvorak, cello concerto, and Brahms piano concerto. And when I sat to play fourth and Dan was playing third, and he counted off, took a breath, and he started to play, and I just about fell off my chair because of the quality of his sound and the direction of his sound. Yes. And I just was like, I had to remind myself, you better come in.
Yes.
Because it was so overpowering in its intensity right there.
Yeah.
As it fans out over the hall, it's exactly right. I just loved it. I just loved this amount of sound, the kind of sound it was. And I will never forget that feeling of, whoa, you know. Yeah, that was one of my favorite memories.
I remember the first time I sat, Dan, it was one of those outreach concerts, and Dan sat next to me, he played assistant, and I just remember I was like, that sound, it was just like, holy smokes, like sitting right next to it and just hearing it like from me to you, just like that close. But and then I've gotten to play a couple times just in the section, just, you know, when someone was missing or for rehearsal or something, you know. and it's just been fantastic. I really
Yeah.
enjoy working with him.
Sound and intention. That's the biggest thing about the horn section too, I think, is that we all have fairly similar sounds.
Yeah.
All a little different, but we're cohesive, very cohesive unit.
Yeah, I got that Michigan tone. Oh yeah, sure, going home. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it does make a difference, I think, where you're from in the States. Like our regional accents, I think how we, feel words affects how we make our tone.
I'd never thought about that like that.
Gail always, wanted to talk about kind of doing a master's thesis on like regional accents affecting our tone. So I don't know if that's.
That would be interesting. So what would mine be with a New England accent?
I mean, I feel like the Boston horn sound is really close to the Chicago horn sound. I mean,
I think it's middle of the road. It's more straight down the middle. It's not dark nor bright.
Yes.
It's clear but neutral.
Yeah, and warm.
Warm, yes. Yeah,
really.
So it doesn't have the brightness that we have in this section here, or the like big warmth that you have traditionally in Philly, New York, and LA, which isn't necessarily that way anymore.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Do you have any advice, or do you teach much?
I don't, with 2 kids running around, and my husband has been playing up in Milwaukee for 3 years, and that means that he's driving 1,500 miles a week. So it's been me at home doing my job and taking care of them, helping with homework, policing screen time, driving, chauffeuring places, bedtime books, all that cooking, shopping.
Yeah, so you teach at home. You teach the family here.
I teach the family. I don't tend to teach much. I occasionally, when someone comes through town, I'll teach. But I don't teach on a every week kind of basis at this point. When the kids are not here, maybe.
Do you have any lessons that you would like to impart with students?
Well, I think the most important thing is sound. And I mean, you have to have your basics, right? You have to have good pitch. You have to have good rhythm. But what really sets people apart, I think, is their sound and their intention. Like if you can, as a friend of mine told me once when he was listening to all kinds of auditions up in Canada, he said the difference between the people who get on to the next round is that the committee can find a reason to forgive them for not being perfect. Mm-hmm. In other words, they want to listen to you. There's something about what you're doing and what you're saying that is compelling to listen to. If you can be a musician first, that's the most important thing.
It sure is. Yeah. And I guess, why are music and the arts so important, especially right now?
It brings us together without words.
Yeah.
You don't have to be on a side. You can be on any side you want and still get a lot out of any concert.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can be Trump supporter, Trump hater, whatever. It doesn't matter in music.
Yeah. Yeah, I miss playing. I miss sharing that. But it's so great to see you here and to get to know you better and to get to know your philosophy on music and the horn and your journey to be here. It's really
thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really special to have this conversation.
Good to see you.
And thank you. Yeah, I know. I miss you. But it's really nice to share this time and share your thoughts. And thank you again for doing this. It's really a great way for us to give back to the horn students in the community. So thank you again.
You bet. Thanks. I hope we see each other again soon.
Yes, absolutely. See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Big hugs.
Yeah.